everyone. Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm South London born and bred, first of all, and a proud descendant of the Windrush generation. I am also a co-founder of a recruitment company called Found by Few.
Hi guys, my name is Felicia. I am originally from Sweden, but feel pretty much British by now, to be honest. I've been here for so long. And I'm the co-founder of Tillit, which I'm sure, well, you said what your company does. So essentially it's an investment platform for individuals like us in this room to make better investment decisions and actually know what you're investing in. And that's what we're about. So I'd love to hear about how you came up with the idea for your businesses, and also what inspired you in the first place to say, like, I want to start a business.
Yeah, so if I'm completely honest, it was a bit of not a mistake, but it was a bit it wasn't supposed to happen really. Lockdown happened. So just to give you some backstory, my experience with recruiters and the recruitment process hasn't been great. I've had quite a few negative experiences, and I met my co-founder Ben, who has 16 plus years experience in recruitment, and we both pretty much agreed that recruiters can do a much better job and a much better experience can be provided to people, and we wanted to be those people to do it. So I think my own personal experience was the inspiration for our company.
And yeah, I'd say it's pretty much the same kind of origin for me. I think a lot of founders start off by trying to solve a problem for themselves. That sounds super selfish, but it means that you're really intimately relating to that problem. Like if you're finding something super frustrating, which I did for my side as well, it wasn't so much about it was a negative experience, but not in the same probably personal way. But for me, it was more, so I have a background in asset management. I used to be a fund manager. And that is a fund with a D at the end, not fund manager, because it wasn't always fun, but usually people are like, fund manager, that sounds interesting. Like, no, I mean it is, but it's not a fund manager. And so I used to work in the industry for 10 years and helping kind of mainly big institutions like pension funds and companies manage, or pick managers to manage their money for their employees or whoever. And I was trying to find ways to manage my own savings and looked at all the big platforms out there. And I just found them really hard to use. And I found that I couldn't make informed investment decisions. I didn't have the information that I wanted to be able to know what to invest in. I felt like there was so much to choose from, and I just found it a bit unhelpful. And I thought, well, if I find it unhelpful, who's in the industry and knows what funds are and what to look for, then I'm probably not alone. And so, but I just used to complain a lot about it, essentially, to everyone I knew. And eventually, literally, my best friend said, stop complaining about this, and why don't you just do something about it? Which I think she genuinely meant as, please just stop complaining about it. But I took it as actually, you know what, maybe my experience can help in building something that's better.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. So you just explained about like how you got your idea. How did you turn your idea into something a little bit more concrete? So, how did you take from your idea to solution? And I'd love to understand, like, obviously there's sort of like the first time you trod down that journey, what would you also do a little bit differently?
So, when we were coming up with the idea, we had a notepad and a pen and was scribbling down loads of different names and ideas, and we pretty much both agreed that something we have to lead with, and values that we should really lead with are diversity, equity and inclusion. So we champion this with our clients, we champion this internally, and we also champion this in all of our external communications as well. And I didn't mention this before, but my background is in marketing, so I have about 10 plus years of marketing and brand experience. So whereas Ben's experience is in recruitment, mine is in brand, and it was pretty, for me it was pretty obvious from the beginning that we needed to build a strong brand in order to differentiate ourselves in the market, but also just communicate those values. So yeah, I would say that's how we turned it into more of a concrete, turned our idea from just an idea into something more concrete. We really put a lot of energy into the brand. And what was your second question?
Is there anything you do like no
differently? Yes. So we're only a year old. We were going for 12 months. There's now 8 of us, and yeah, things are going really well. So I can't really say there's anything we would do differently. Yeah, I'm pretty much happy with how things are going, if I'm honest. Yeah.
So I guess starting an investment platform takes quite a lot of different things, in that sense of you have to build it, so the coding, it needs to be regulated, there's quite a lot of different things that you have to do, and I'm a first-time founder, I've never built a tech platform, never mind a fintech platform, and so for me I left my job and then I actually did a coding course to learn how to code, but not because I thought I could code the platform, but because why not? And I did that, and then after that, the part of that was also to get into the tech community, because all my friends and my contacts were in, well, non-tech essentially. I knew nobody in tech, and I knew that I needed a technical co-founder, so for me it was really, this might be one way to find one. So for me a big part in the beginning was from setting up the company and kind of trying to build a prototype, then finding that technical co-founder. That took me quite a while. But my co-founder now, Paul, is literally the best human ever, and we work exceptionally well together, and we built a really great team, one of whom is here today actually, Lillian, together, and I think that's been a big part of, without Paul I could never have done this, and I don't think even if I found a different person it wouldn't be built as well as it is. And so for us is really that kind of getting a technical co-founder, starting to build the platform, starting to build a team, getting regulated. There's a lot of different things. So it took quite a while in that sense, and we've been going, well, when it was not just me, it was we closed our first round in October 2020, and then we hired our first employee later on in October, and so that's a little bit over a year and a half. And we're now 6 people, but we're about to be 14 or 15 in July. So there's a lot of growth happening now, but it's quite a long journey to get it off the starting point until you have something to show to customers, which is pretty daunting in itself. And in terms of doing things differently, I feel, especially after you said no, I should say yes, sorry, but I feel like we've been really lucky. We also we started to raise money during the pandemic, which, not ideal. But in general, in hindsight, things turn out really well, and so far, touch wood, things are still going well. There's individual parts of that I wish perhaps we would have done differently, but there isn't anything fundamentally that I wish that we'd done differently. I think hiring is the hardest part. and we've learned things, and we're still learning things about that. And I think that's probably worth taking the time to really think about and really learn. And I think it's connected back to values, as you talked about as well, and getting the right people in for the right reasons and not just skills. But yeah, that's probably.
Great. Thank you. We've started moving into the sort of area of building teams. When did you know it was the right time to start recruiting and building your team, and any tips around like how to build a good team?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go back to your point, Felicia, about hiring being very hard. Yes, it's extremely difficult. And as you know, a recruitment agency, we're on the front lines of that. And we specialise in product and design recruitment. And the pandemic has mean that every business is trying to build a digital product. So you can imagine how in demand product people and designers are. And if it wasn't for the team we have today, we would not exist. We would not be able to serve our clients and give them the level of service that we're giving them at the moment. And so, like I said, Ben, my co-founder, who is amazing also, he has 16 plus years experience. I have 0 in recruitment. But I do all the internal recruitment, and I've had to learn very fast, and it's become something I enjoy. I love being able to build our culture and build the team and recruit everyone. They're just amazing, and yeah, our success is down to them really.
And I think for us it was that kind of in terms of the timing of when to start hiring a team. There was no way that we would be able to build this ourselves, so we needed to build a team as soon as possible after we closed the first funding round, because we couldn't afford to build a team before then. But yeah, it sounds a bit like chicken and egg, but so for us that was why we raised, essentially, to build that team and get all of the regulatory stuff in place. And in terms of kind of hiring tips in general, I mean, it is, yeah, what's really hard, I think, is also, there's many things, like when you're a small startup, nobody knows who you are, it's a risk to join a startup, and so you have to pitch the employee just as much as they're pitching you, and I think what's really important comes back to the whole values and skills and personality. I think there's an element of, if you feel in the process that maybe this person isn't as committed or as enthusiastic about what you're doing, maybe think twice even if they have all the skills on paper, because being in a startup is really hard. We work really hard. Nadine will tell you this as well, in that sense of we all really pull together. And I think if you really are passionate about why you're doing what you're doing as a team, it makes it easier and it makes it more interesting, and you push harder, you learn more, and you just build better stuff, really. Whereas if you don't have that commitment for the end mission, it's harder to want to kind of stay in it when things are tough. So perhaps where we've gone wrong in the past is hiring for experience and seeing perhaps a few flags on the other sides, and we've then dealt with that quickly when things haven't worked out or things are kind of in that sense. But that would be one thing that I would say is look at hiring for fit, and that doesn't mean that everybody's the same, but look for fit and incentives and what drives people. And I think the other thing would be, if you are very involved in the hiring process as a founder, which me and Paul both are, and I think that's the right decision, because the team is everything. Like the quality of the company, the quality of what the customer gets is all about the team. And so as founders, it's really important in the early days, I think, to be super, super involved. But if you are, it's a huge time commitment. So maybe don't try and hire 10 roles at the same time, which is basically what we're doing, and almost killing ourselves in the process. But we're getting there now. Yeah, I mean, that's good. Yeah, you're a bit late. Like, this is a bit late now, but you know, we will be hiring again. So yes, I'll come back to you and do a good deal. So in that sense, I'd say, try to think about all of those things. That what are you looking for in general? Be really involved, because it does really matter. It's worth the time commitment to get it right. which a great team always is the proof of, but maybe don't try and do too many things at once if you are a small team.
So we talked about getting the team ready. What about how did you know your product was ready to put in front of clients, and what was your experience like? What did you learn and how did you do it?
So obviously we're a service-led business. So in terms of how we kind of knew our product or our service rather was ready, was I guess from all the positive feedback we got. So when we launched, we went live with our website. I do a lot of personal branding on LinkedIn. I'm very vocal about a lot of the issues that we I guess we stand up for, and a lot of DE&I, a lot of issues, and I've had a lot of experience in the past where I felt like I haven't belonged in an organisation, and when we launched and we went live with the website, the positive feedback we got was just, it was insane. We did not expect to get as amazing feedback from not only clients but candidates, friends and family. So that was definitely a moment where we realised that we had something special, and then the new business, the partnerships snowballed off the back of that. So I'm a big believer in the power of brand and the power of values and staying true to your values first and foremost, and the business will come, and that's exactly what happened.
And for us, I think this has actually been really hard for me in terms of one of the many things that, being a founder, I find is the biggest learning curve of anything I've ever done, on a personal level as much as the professional aspects. And but I think one of those things is I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and so the whole MVP idea of startups, I'm like, no, it needs to be perfect. And it's like, then again, no, because then we'll be here for 15 years. So is knowing when to get something out there is difficult, and I think especially with fintech, and with a lot of different areas, but fintech in particular, there's so many exceptional companies out there that have really raised the bar on what an MVP looks like. And I think also not just looks like, feels like, is to use. And I think when you're also in financial services, you deal with people's money, you deal with people's savings. It's really important that it is secure, that it is reliable, that it doesn't have typos, that it doesn't have bugs. It's all about trust. Like Tillit means trust in Swedish, and for us it's kind of it's like the least trusted industry on the planet. So it can only really go up. So we're trying to build something that people trust, and so getting that balance right of when do we get something out there to get feedback, and it's not perfect, but it's good enough for people not to lose trust, because we are looking to attract people who want to trust us with their long-term savings. You don't do that if you feel like, I'm not really sure how this put together and how safe this is to use. So for us, when we went live with our beta version was in May last year, and that was partly because we've then been building it for about, almost 6 months. We originally said that's going to take 3, or rather, I originally said it's going to take 3. Obviously, was never going to take 3. No one believed me. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And so when we then got to kind of April, May, and also our regulatory permissions took a bit while to get through as well. And then there is an element of, we've now kind of gone through half a year since we raised. We need to get something out there. So we did, and it's like any other beta version. You learn, you do it with friends and family, close ones, and you kind of we gradually added people on from there on, and the feedback was good. But then again, but the nature of what we're building, our customers are pretty independent, so they don't give us a lot of feedback, and in fact, it's really hard to get people to give you feedback, because everybody hates giving feedback, whether it's to a colleague or, show of hands, when you get an email asking you to give feedback on something, how many of you in this room typically tend to reply? Yeah, that's single digits. Like, yeah, it's really, really hard. It's amazing, those of you who do. Honestly, you are gold dust. You have no idea how everybody loves you on the other side. But it is really hard. So for us, it's taken a while we have to kind of really try and dig deep on the feedback we get. And we're still learning. But yeah, so far, it seems that the people who are using it seems to like the product, resonate. Our biggest kind of entry point for new customers is word of mouth, and that I think speaks for the product as well.
What you said about trust, I mean, that really resonates with us, especially. Like, literally every post on LinkedIn says no recruiters please. I mean, if you've got if you've got one consumer client base that's hard to crack, it's definitely in recruitment, and we seem to be doing that, and people seem to be trusting us, and our feedback is great. The Google reviews are 5-star at the moment. Thanks, Percy. But yeah, trust. Yeah, gaining trust, especially when you're just starting up, is so important.
Thank you for emphasising that, and you really raised a really important point actually, because it reminded me of something that I'd read way back about UX and prototyping, and how people think that prototype can be like scrappy and look, you don't have to think about the aesthetics and what it looks like, but actually that's it's a bit of a myth, because you put it in front of a customer, like a real life customer, and if it's like, I don't know, stuck together with paper, it's like, not create a great impression. Great, thank you. So now I just wanted to move a little bit into speaking about the work and the product and the service. I wanted to talk about the impact of starting a business on your life. So, when we go to work the 9 to 5, many of us, worked at 9 to 5, or you have your hours, you might work in the evenings, but it's quite regular. How has your life changed? What kind of sacrifices have you made in order to get your company up and running?
Yes, so in terms of sacrifices, I would say holidays is definitely not a thing anymore. So just to give you an example, I tried to go on a holiday at the beginning of the year for my birthday, and then one of our employees handed in their resignation on my birthday at 6 p.m. So as you can imagine, switched straight into work mode, and pretty much worked all of that holiday. But on the flip side, running a business does give you the flexibility to mold it around your lifestyle, and being a dog mum, and like I mentioned before, South London proud. Our business is based in Brixton, South London, which is great because it's where I grew up, and Lambeth holds a very dear place in my heart. And then also our office is dog friendly, so I get to bring my little Indy, well, not so little, but Indy in, and everyone loves it. She brings a lot of joy to the office, and you're able to an extent mold your business around your lifestyle, but at the end of the day, you're still beholden to your team and their well-being and what they need. And I think that is something a lot of people don't understand, or maybe don't have a window or insight into, because a lot of your time, a lot of my time is spent making sure my team are happy, and just making sure that they're well looked after and happy, and that is definitely a big part of the job, and a big lifestyle change.
I was fortunate to come from quite a privileged background of working in financial services, and usually people are like, oh, everything's like banking and you work all the time, and where I worked, I did not work all the time, and I worked a 9-to-5 job with a very cushy salary, and I had really nice holidays and all of that stuff, and then you throw that all away essentially to one side, and you put everything into the business. You don't draw a salary for ages, and when you do draw a salary, is like a significant, like just a small portion of what you used to do. And so in that sense, for me, yeah, in terms of time commitment and to spending time with friends and so on, that has significantly been reduced, and holidays have been significantly reduced. This all sounds very exciting, isn't it, for anyone who wants to start a business? But I think, and I'm also guilty of being a bit of a workaholic. And I think that's the thing of where you have to learn to set boundaries, and I'm really bad at that in general. I'm a bit of an all or nothing kind of person, and when it's your own business, you're hopefully doing it because you really enjoy what you're doing, and so it doesn't really feel like work, so it is still work. And that's why it's even harder, I find, to set those boundaries of when now you stop working, now you do something else, you have a life. I don't really have much of a life at the moment. Again, it sounds really appealing, right? But it is that those things you have to try and find ways to keep sanity somehow. And I certainly haven't got that right yet. And so there has been knock-on effects on how I live my life. But that's also because I'm aware of it. You can then try and do something about it. And I think this also, having other founder friends also help, and anyone who ever reached out to me is like, I'm thinking of starting a business, anything I can ever do to help, and I think those things are important as well. But then at the other side of that, it's literally the best thing I've ever done, and I think it's one of those where being able, I think it's a privilege to be able to give someone a job and to be able to help someone learn new things, develop in their career, and I get a huge amount of kind of personal reward out of that. I find that really, really exciting. So that, and then when you have a customer saying, you know, I really love this or this and that, and I finally understand what this is all about. That's huge, and it means that you're actually doing something that makes a difference and helps someone else. So it's worth it for me, and I think this also comes back to, you have to really believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it, because otherwise you wouldn't put in the hours that either of us probably do, and keep going in that sense as well.
I wanted to move now on to a big hot topic around funding. And we found a massive pattern here, so you might want to talk about them together. Every time we have this session, we ask women a second question, which is around like, what challenges have you found as women on this journey in your startup that's different to men? And your answer might be different this time, but if you have found challenges in regards to funding and being a woman, you can incorporate it into this question as well. So yeah, just your approach to funding, how you got funding, etc., and maybe any aspects that are different around maybe men that have started a company.
Yeah, so as a recruitment agency is, I guess, different to building a product. A product, you need, or a bit of software, you need like a big injection of cash, whereas a recruitment agency, you can start from your bedroom. But the agency that we're building, we needed a partner and someone that shared our values, and we were able to find that. And that enables us to operate smoothly and, you know, give our staff a really good experience. And in regards to securing investment as a woman, I personally haven't faced any barriers to that, and I think that's probably due to the fact that funding in what we're building is different, but also I guess it's also a bit of luck as well. I've happened to be partnered with someone who treats women fairly and champions women and women's rights and is amazing. So yeah, I can't really speak to that second question, but yeah, I hope that answers that one.
Yeah, and I, spoiler alert, I haven't really had an awful experience either. However, I think Yeah, so for us, I mean, my co-founder is the CTO. I take on the CEO role, so all of the fundraising is kind of with me, and we've raised 2 rounds, so we definitely we can't keep, like this is one of those, we need to raise quite a significant amount of money before we make anything back. So we've raised so far over 2 rounds, just under 5 million, and that's come from angels and venture capital, and I think it's been one of those where it's hard. You have to go in. It's one of those, I'm not sure it's a male versus female thing, but it's one of those where essentially at this early stage you need to be able to convince someone of the potential in the story and why you as founders are likely to make a success of it, because there's nothing else to hang it on. There's no metrics, there's no product. For the first round there's a product, and the second round for us, but there's no metrics. And there's certainly no profit, barely any revenue. And so in that sense, a lot of it comes down to storytelling and how good you are at being able to convince people to come on that journey with you. And that is a skill that I think anybody can learn, and it doesn't really matter where you're from, but you need to really believe in what you're doing and have confidence in being able to articulate that. And I think that's the tricky thing. I think also I've spoken to, the first round probably we were luckier there because we got that round filled very quickly. The second round was a bit harder, and I've spoken to probably about 50 or 60 different VCs and fewer angels and so on, but you learn pretty quickly who asks you genuinely interesting long-term focused questions and who's asking you questions to tick a box, who's on their phone when you're talking to them or pitching to them, and there is different dynamics. And I don't think I because I'm not a man, I haven't had the A/B testing or seeing what it's like on the other side, but I think you see bad behavior across the board sometimes, and I think part of it is just calling it out. And if you think that they aren't actually genuinely passionate about what you're trying to do, don't take their money. Like, it's literally harder to get rid of an investor than getting a divorce, getting anything else. You cannot divorce your investor. I mean, it's okay, I haven't wanted to try, but it's one of those, you can't. Like, unless you are independently wealthy and can buy them out, you're stuck with them until there's an exit. That may be in, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And the initial part is almost like courting, it's almost like dating in that sense. And if that's not going well, it's not going to go very well when things go bad. And things will eventually at some point go bad. And you want to know that they're in your corner, you're in there in the trenches together, and they're there to back you, and they're there to try and help you find solutions, rather than, oh my god, this is, you only made X point, 7 rather than, 0.8 that you were saying you're going to do, and all of those things. So I think really being picky about your investors, knowing who you take money from, is the hard thing, because sometimes you're kind of driving, I need this cash in. And so that's the other thing I would say, is trying to raise when you don't need the money, as in, or at least give yourself enough time to raise, because it can take a long time, and you don't want to be with like 2 weeks of runway, because then you end up taking potentially money from someone you shouldn't. The only thing I will say in terms of being a woman, one thing that I was asked once, which I don't think probably a lot of men are asked, was, well, so you're in your, so I'm 34, and it's not like part of the pitch of saying how old I am, but I think, someone can make a rough judge of, roughly what age band I'm in. And he was like, well, so, so you're living alone, or in that, like, I can't remember the exact wording around, but essentially looking to get married anytime soon, and he did say, what about children? And that sounds probably awful to some people. I'm like, well, at the moment I'm single, so no children planned anytime soon. And it's one of those, instead of getting your back up against the wall about it, you have to just roll with it around, is he asking that because of a sexist reason of, I don't want to fund a woman who might want to have children at some point, or is he trying to understand your commitment to the business, which doesn't mean that you're not committed if you're looking to have children. But I think if I was planning to have children, I probably said, yeah, I do want to have children in the next couple of years, and that does not mean I'm going to have a lobotomy. So it's one of those things where you just have to have that conversation with them. And as I said to him, I'm like, you know what, one day I will want to have children, and then we can talk about that then, if you're one of our investors. So I think that's probably the only kind of question that probably a lot of men don't get, which I really wish they did, because they should be more involved. Anyway.
In this process that you've been on so far on your journey, what lessons have you learned about yourself, like personal lessons? That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, I've drunk a bit of wine and been a little bit tipsy. But so yes, personal lessons, personal growth. So I have learned that that embracing my sensitive side is not a bad thing. So I've had a lot of I guess negative experiences where I've had previous employers or colleagues tell me that I'm too sensitive, and have really like made a point that that's going to really hold me back in my career. But because I'm quite a headstrong person and I don't really give a crap, I've remained my sensitive self, and that's actually been a massive benefit to us as a business, and also to our brand as well, and a lot of what we speak about publicly. And it's also just allowed me to I guess be able to empathise more with our staff, and to just connect with people. And that's what people really crave, especially after the pandemic. And obviously I mentioned before, I do all the internal recruitment, and something I noticed while hiring for us is that people care about the salary, people care about, the role, but what people really care about is how they're going to be treated within your organisation. And that has been one of our strengths. In the recruitment industry, in general, people tend to not have such a great experience, and we are basically here to improve that, not only for our clients and our candidates, but also for recruiters, because recruiters are people too, and they're amazing people, and this is such an incredible industry.
Tips for our founders that are here today?
To trust your gut instinct, because it's usually always right. Number 2 would be to enjoy the ride. You can always find yourself just worrying and stressing about everything that's happening, but actually you just need to enjoy it and just have fun along the way. And I would say lastly, to make sure that you lean on the people around you, especially your staff, your co-founder, friends and family, because you can't do everything yourself. And I'm definitely guilty of trying to do everything myself. I think I resonate with what you say, Felicia, about being a perfectionist. I always try to make sure everything I put out there, especially when you're in marketing. I don't know if there's any marketers in the room, but when you're in marketing, you put a lot of energy into whether it's a social media post to a bit of marketing collateral to a website. You're putting your heart and soul into that for the world to see, and I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure it's right. And I'm going to do a little shout out to Shania, who's sitting in the front row. She's absolutely amazing. She's our new social media exec, and just letting her get on with what she does best and seeing the amazing results that she's coming out with and what she's producing it's just been game changing. And I think when you can step back and just let your staff do what they do best, you'll get amazing results. So.
I can't believe you've stolen the last thing I was going to say. I can't believe you said that. No, but I think it's such an important one, and I'll start there then in terms of the whole. If you do decide to go out and build something, build a great team who let them be and get out of the way, and that's something that I'm still learning as well, because that's why you hire great people, right? Because they do great things, and then just let them go and get on with those things. So I think that's one. I think the other thing is that a lot of people don't. You mentioned that this whole perfection and everything goes well, and everyone raises 500 million after 2 days, and like all of this stuff, and that doesn't show you all of the other stuff that goes on. That's the polish. That's the Instagram version of being a founder. It's not the full life, and so most founders that I know, and I think a lot of founders have imposter syndrome, and this whole of can I really do this? Am I the right person? You're standing in front of investors and they're like asking you, you're never going to be able to do this. And I think if you decide to do it, really, really believe in yourself. And most of the time in those rooms, when you're raising money or anywhere else, you will be the expert in that room. Just know that and inform yourself. Just tell yourself that before you go in. I know the most about this in this room. Therefore, like, you really have to believe in that. And so try to put all this kind of imposter stuff to the side, because you're better than you think you are, and especially if you're building something that you believe in. And I think the final thing I would say is genuinely just do it. If you are thinking of doing it, the worst thing that happens is that you fail, and you still learn a lot, and it's a hugely valuable experience. Like, honestly, if this failed tomorrow, Lillian will be fine, but if this failed tomorrow, it would be so worth it for me. I've never learned as much as I am right now, and nothing has been as rewarding. So genuinely just go for it. You only have one life, honestly. There's like, you can have so many careers in life, so if it doesn't work out, it's still worth it. Genuinely just go for it. And if you ever have any questions, I'm always very happy to like reach out with like sharing anything, or if you want to bounce ideas around or whatever it is. I think that's also something great that I would say the community of founders and startups in the UK, in London in particular, is fantastic. Everyone is really trying to help one another out and trying to minimize the issues and the mistakes they made by sharing that with others. So yeah, just go for it, honestly.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're ready to take a few questions from the audience. Does anybody have a question? You can raise your hand. We've only got one mic, so I can run over with the mic so you can ask a question.
Hiya, thank you both so much for sharing your experiences. My question's for Felicia. Between you and your co-founder, how did you decide when you were fundraising how much or what to give away? What was your kind of setup? Like, what did you guys think was too much or too little?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you'll get 50 million different answers from different people. I think for us, the way that we thought about it is a few different ways. So the first thing was figuring out what is the amount of money that we need to be able to build some for the next 12 months to get to some significant milestones. Typically fundraising can take anything between 3 months and 9 months sometimes, but 3 to 6 months. So if you only have cash for less than 12 months, essentially as soon as you raise that, you need to go out and raise again, and you can't focus on the business. So the first thing you're thinking, ideally you want to raise cash for the next 18 months to give you enough time to really show progress, build something, hit those milestones, to be able to then raise a more successful round in the next time. So that's the kind of to get to the right amount, I think. And then the second thing after that is figure out in terms of valuation and equity and so on. We looked at, so for whatever stage round, if it's a pre-seed round or a seed round, what typically is the average seed round kind of size / what do they give away in terms of percentage, which you can kind of then figure out from valuations and so on. And there are kind of rules of thumbs, particularly in the first couple of rounds, of anything between 15 and 30%. Now, so that's kind of general, and then we looked at our industry. So fintech tends to raise more for less equity in general, so we kind of, so if we set out to raise 500k in the first round. We were fortunate enough to raise $1 million. But in that sense, we looked at, okay, well then we want to give away between 20 and 25%. But then the conversation with the investors, and I picked this up from one useful VC, who said, he's like, well, you never want to nail, don't want to say a specific valuation in your deck. You kind of dance around it and you say, this is how much we need to raise. And then ultimately the market sets the price. And so the way we phrased that to investors is when they asked about the valuation or the percentage, we said, well, we don't want to be greedy, but we do need to raise future rounds. So we can't give away too much now because then we won't have anything left by Series A. And I think those are the other things of, if you're giving away 15 to 30%, you look at what do we give away in the next round, similar there. Another kind of general point is that if you get into Series A, which typically is like the third round you'll do, and the founding team has less than 50%, that becomes a very difficult round to do. So if you go at it because then the new investors are going to have to recapitalize the founders to make sure they're incentivized and all of those things. And the VCs know that, or any investor who's experienced knows that. So if you come at it from that angle, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, and you've thought about this, and it's within kind of the industry, rather than, I'm greedy and I want a 20 million valuation. That doesn't make any sense. So I think trying to use kind of methodical things that they fundamentally also agree with, and that helps you get to the answer-ish, yeah, and then negotiate after that.
I've got a little follow-up, sorry. So with your organisation, what's kind of your exit strategy? Because I know you're VC funding, so what's kind of the exit plan at this point?
Yeah, so for those who didn't hear, that was about the exit strategy and the exit plan. I think that's the other thing, right, where if you take someone else's money, you need to be able to give it back. And so you need an exit of some sort. For us, there's a lot of competition generally in our space. We haven't left our jobs to build a prettier version of a bigger competitor. We want to build something that really creates change and is a long-term significant business that really helps people. And so in that sense, for us, the dream for us is an IPO, because that is an exit that still kind of builds a big company. We don't want to do a trade sale, but there's so many different ways. Sell to a competitor, you sell to private equity, you find a way to find permanent capital who don't want it back. I mean, that's the hardest. Or an IPO, and that's also very statistically very unlikely, but that's our goal, to build a significant business where that makes sense.
When you go back to, think back to a year when you first started off, you're bringing obviously marketing, your background and his recruitment background. How did you, agree on things? And I guess, something that you mentioned was like values or something that was like, without answering my own question, but like agreeing on like your vision and where you want to go, I would have bumped heads a lot because I'm always like, my way or highway sometimes.
Great question. So I don't want to throw my business partner under the bus too much, but so marketing and brand is completely alien to him. So when I was coming up with ideas and suggestions, it's natural if something's not your area that you're going to be unsure or a bit fearful of that territory, but yeah. So sometimes it was a bit like, are you sure? But ultimately, I think the way we were able to resolve those differences, very rare, small differences, but was just testing it. So obviously, very different to a product. Our testing was basically putting the ideas out there via social media and seeing the response, and the response was always positive. So it was a no-brainer that Danielle was right. And there's like that's basically what we did, and then that was great, because then that also helps each other see, and what's great about that actually is that because we both have different fields of expertise, we're able to then respect each other in those different areas. And I mean, just watching him and seeing how amazing he is, and the knowledge and just everything he brings in terms of recruitment to the business is just amazing. And then also, on the flip side, him seeing that from me, it just makes the relationship stronger, but also the brand and the business stronger as well.
Work in marketing, and I'm interested in finding out how you landed your first client, but also how you scaled up. Because a lot of people often talk about build a community, talk to your target audience, but organic social media is quite weak.
So I think we're quite fortunate that my co-founder Ben and I came to the table with an existing network, especially him, due to his many, many years. But all the organic marketing we were able to do via social media, especially LinkedIn, brought a lot of new business to the table, especially, so for instance, since launch, we probably get around 2 inbounds every 2 weeks, and that is just off the back of the marketing we do organically via LinkedIn and Instagram, but also now more so off the back of all the amazing work that our staff are doing. But I mean, I've been in marketing for a long time, and I've worked for a lot of different companies and different industries, and I've used a lot of energy building those companies up and building their profiles and their brands, and I'm now able to put all of that into our business. And I would say if you've got a clear message and clear values, I would run with that and use all the marketing platforms you have at your disposal to make your vision and your services known.
How many times did you doubt yourself in the process, and how did you overcome the doubts?
I mean, all the time. I mean, I still doubt myself a lot, and I think that's something that never really quite goes away. If you're trying to build something big and something that's difficult and something that's new, and you're going up against people who have been around for decades, regardless of what industry you're in, with massive brands and all that stuff, and there's always that little, the reason why, it's one of those things of entrepreneurs in general is trying to do something that other people have either not tried to do or tried and failed. So you have to believe for some reason that you're going to succeed, but there's so much else that says statistically you shouldn't, because people have more money, more resource, more brand, more all of that. So more experience, everything else. So I still doubt myself a lot day to day, and I think it's just one of those coming back to why are we doing this, and what am I bringing to the table, and what is everybody else in the team bringing to the table, and part of it also just fake it till you make it. You kind of have to convince yourself, like, no, just push it to one side, and I'm amazing. Like, especially if you're going into pitch, if you're going into those things, I think it's so important to just push all of that aside and just, I'm a rock star, and you just go in. That's what a lot of men do anyway.
So I agree with that. I definitely doubt myself on a daily basis. And I also think when you're a small business and you're competing against the giants, that always comparing yourself to other people is a dangerous thing. And I think a particular moment was when one of our staff got poached by Monzo, and it's just, you can imagine a lot of self-doubt, and that was definitely a low moment, but you've got to kind of put things into perspective a little bit, and it's like, well, we're a company that's a year old with 8 people, and we can't, one, compete with Monzo, but also that's amazing. Like Monzo, like Monzo is looking to us as an expert in recruitment and especially in the DE&I space, and they're looking at us and our staff and thinking, we need those people in our company. So as much as it was a moment where it was like, oh my God, like all my staff are gonna leave and it's gonna be terrible, but also you have to, sit there and think, wow, we're amazing. Like we have big tech companies wanting our staff because we've built this incredible brand and people are loving what we're doing. So you've sometimes got to turn that self-doubt into a positive, and that's how I'm able to, I guess, overcome it.
You mentioned that you didn't have anyone in your circle that was already in tech. So how did you go about finding your business partner? And if you guys were initially strangers, how do you go to like share your idea to a stranger that could potentially, I don't know, steal it from you?
That's a really good question. I think I'll start at the end there with the idea. I think it's one of those, I think everyone has that, like, oh my God, I have this amazing idea, everyone's going to want to steal it. Literally no one cares. I mean, so like whether it's a VC or it's like, literally no. So in that sense, it's like, you hear founders wanting to like get VCs to sign an NDA, never do that. They never will, and it's pointless anyway. And so in that sense, I think that was just one of those being humble with myself of like, I think it's amazing, but like that's, and then also an idea is just an idea. It's all about execution. It's all about bringing that to life. And so, there's so many different ways of implementing ideas. So that was for me less of a thing. And I think just, I'll tell people about this, and you have to, because otherwise how are you going to sell it to someone? So for me, it took me quite a while to find Paul, but I found him through a mutual connection who ended up being one of our angel investors as well. And this is going to sound a bit odd, but Paul and I used to work at the same place, but where we worked was 1,500 people. We've never met unless, we've probably been in the same canteen at some times, but we never knew each other. And so when I reached out to this individual who's the connection, I said, I'm looking for someone who do you think I should speak to? And so you should speak to Paul. And so, and at the same time, I also reached out, while I was also talking to Paul, I reached out to people on LinkedIn and like, hello, I have this amazing idea. I want to chat to you. I'm sure you want to chat to me. Most people don't. And you just have to kind of continue to hustle until someone joining the co-founders. There's various different networks. And bearing in mind, I started up in basically started looking for a co-founder in February 2020. And then March 2020, people will remember kind of what happened. So all in-person events, dead. So you have to find other ways to try and find people. And so that was hard. But I did manage to get a few people to just explain what we're doing. And with Paul, we ended up having virtual Zoom conversations once a week to just get to know one another, finding out why I was doing this, if he was on board. He was really excited about the idea. We talked for probably about over a month before we actually felt, okay, you know what? He wanted to join me. I was talking to him and one other person where I thought both of these people could work, but there was something with Paul, like I just feel like we would be a really good team. And so really it was on that way forward. And he at that point also said, I will resign now. We had not started fundraising, I had not started fundraising. I'm like, Paul, we may not have any money. Are you sure? And he's like, yes, I will do it anyway. So I think for me, and then actually we worked together for a full year virtually without meeting. So we met in person for the first time a year on from having worked together. But it's just trying to get out there, speak to people about your idea. You'll see who's interested. And then you have to take a bit of a punt on someone. And I've been extremely lucky, and sounds like you have been as well, with the way that we work together. And you don't know that until you try. And I think co-founding relationships is the hardest thing. So finding someone who's passionate again and someone who's got the skills that you think you need.